Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another Mint on Card showcase. Today we are jumping into the time machine and traveling back a whole 19 years as we take a look at this. From Hasbro, we have the G.I. Joe, a real American hero, Valor vs. Venom, Kamakura. Alright, so if you're not familiar with Kamakura, it was a character that originally debuted in the Devil's Due G.I. Joe comics of the early 2000s. Kamakura is the apprentice to the ninja master Snake Eyes. Much like Snake Eyes, I believe he belongs to the Arashikage clan, I think. The character originally debuted, I think, as a child in the original Marvel comic books, I think. But Devil's Due was pretty keen on revisiting the character and, fully developing him into a, nowadays beloved Joe character. Recently, I think it was last year, Hasbro released the Classified series figure of Kamakura, which I reviewed on my channel. Excellent, excellent product. Great character. I want to say this might have been his, at the time, maybe second or third figure from Hasbro. It's a pretty neat figure. Like I mentioned earlier, this was a budget figure that was available at Family Dollar. I got it for $5 from a local collectible toy store, which I think is a fair price. You don't run into these budget figures very often. They're not always well documented, so it's hard to know what was out there at the time. If you're a fan of Valor vs. Venom, bless your heart. It was not that it was a short-lived line, but I think I've said this before. As time moves forward, I think a lot of the sublines in G.I. Joe, they kind of become forgotten. For the most part, people are always going to remember the original 12-inch figures. They're going to remember a real American hero line from the 2000s. But I think, for a lot of the sublines, like G.I. Joe Extreme, Resolute, and Renegades, Valor vs. Venom, I think, people are just going to forget about these unless they grew up during this time period or were active collectors. The Kamakura figure is pretty decent. He has a surprisingly very sharp G.I. Joe logo on his strap. He has his dog tags, mask, comes with a sheath and his sword. It's a nice looking figure, especially for this time period. The Joes around this time period were slightly larger than the original 80s figures. You're looking at something that scales closer to 4 inches. On the back, you have a nice meaty bio card where they talk about him, his relationship to his master, Snake Eyes. And this is a really cool thing. Yeah, so this came out in 2004. It's crazy. This thing's almost 20 years old. If you're a younger collector, I say this all the time. I think it's worth giving some of the older figures a look. Nowadays it's easy to fall in love with the much larger G.I. Joe Classified series figures. Those are wonderful. They're detailed. They're 6 inches. Lots of accessories. But for the most part, a lot of us grew up on these smaller Joes. I'd consider this maybe like a second or third generation Joe action figure. First generation's at 12 inches, second generation's, a real American hero from the 80s. And, anything since then, I kind of consider like third generation, anything produced in the 90s and early 2000s. And this definitely falls in the early 2000s. It's a wonderful figure. It's a little bit of a piece of history. And if you're a Joe comic book fan, even more so. The articulation scheme is pretty basic. The head rotates, the arms move, biceps swivel, single pinned elbow and knees. And I think this figure might have the O-ring, much like the older figures, I think. Alright, so I just wanted to share this with you. It was a nice little find that I found out in the wild, and I was pretty stoked on it. Like I said, some of these budget figures from Dollar General, Family Dollar, the kind of stuff that you find at like TJ Maxx sometimes. They often go undocumented. Most people don't know about these unless, you hunt them down on the message boards or whatever. They're kind of like hidden gems. All right, with that being said, let's wrap this one up. Once again, my name is Lou. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, buy lots of toys, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll see you at the next one. All right, later.